Hello, everybody. I hope you're all well, and thank you for signing up and attending. Really appreciate it. So I'm Rickardo Stewart from Art Against Knives, and I have with us my colleague Katie Dorr. We've got some really exciting slides to whiz through with you guys, and yeah, we'll close it with like 15-10 minutes of like question answers, just open conversation about anything that's come up or what's on your minds. Um, so we are here today to speak about how we use creativity to shift power to young people. I'm going to start off with a little intro about Art Against Knives, our story. So we're a registered charity. We've been around for about 15 years. In 2008, unfortunately, a friend of ours was attacked and stabbed and left paralyzed in a wheelchair, and that's what started kind of our efforts to create change. And that came out of Central St. Martin's, which gained quite a lot of support from like big names in the art world, from Banksy, Tracy Emin, and we wanted to like channel this support into like action, addressing the root causes of knife crime by listening to young people and putting them in the lead. So fast forward to current landscape and where we're at right now. We're a registered charity, and we specifically work directly with young people in and around their communities in the borough of Barnet. And we use creativity to make it possible for young people to imagine the change they want to see for themselves in the communities they work in and live in. We work with young people aged 10 to 25, again, that live or socialize or access education in the borough of Barnet. We mainly see those young people coming through our doors that are most at risk of violence, abuse, and exploitation. So a little bit about our approach. We build trusted relationships in all different ways, but that's like a key part of our work and how we like, yeah, get more depth and get to know these young people. We establish like safe spaces and projects which young people are able to access education support, one-to-one, self like personal development stuff. We're talking a little bit about like social imagination stuff that we do, and we foster those relationships. But a big part of our work is like place-based work, and within those we offer which we call direct support, but that's where like the mentoring, the depth, like the real like depth support work happens. So we do a lot of wraparound support, like thinking like psychologically informed approaches to like better the progression and support for young people. And we do a lot of systems change work, which young people, so to enable people's voices to be heard outside of our walls. So kicking us off, I'm going to hand over to Katie.
Well, hi everyone. Riccardo and I have actually worked together for 15 years, so we've both been around since the early days. And I think actually one of the nice things about being asked to do this presentation was an opportunity to reflect on everything we have learned together over the past 15 years. And actually just a little reminder of how like Art Against Knives started because we wanted to address an issue, but as young people, in fact, I was 21 when Art Against Knives started. Um, actually we looked to other young people for the answers and put them in the lead of that. And Art Against Knives has been really successful, and we're incredibly proud of the amazing work that we're still able to do. But it literally has been because we've been able to put young people in the lead of this work, and they have truly designed our work and our provision and led the way. So yeah, I've just felt like a really important thing to bring into the room today, which is like, this work works if you really can position young people and shift power to them, like they're like literally you're winning. That is your strategy basically, and like that has been ours. And so yeah, this is all testament to them and their work, and we're just sharing what we've learned from them with you all today. The other thing that we reflected on when we were putting this together was like, often as people also like yourselves, like working in this space, like we often hear a lot of language and words around like co-production, shifting power, all of this stuff. And actually, like what feels like the most, it can often be quite hard to imagine that in practice, right? And the kind of tangibility. So we've really worked today to try and bring to life some, I hope, some really tangible, exciting examples of what that looks like. And we're trying to move away from like just the kind of like sector jargon and the chat about it. And so yeah, we really welcome your feedback, by the way, at the end of this to see how that feels. And obviously, if you've got any questions. Cool. All right. So these are the 7 ways in which we use creativity to shift power to young people. Riccardo and I are going to whiz you through. So the first thing is that, like, before we do anything and think about practice, like, we just really make sure that young people get to define themselves. Often, you've heard us already share a definition about young people. Yeah, typically the young people we meet are those who are most at risk. But what's really essential to us is that we let each individual walk through that door and define who they are. Here's just an example of some of the ways that, when we ask young people how they would describe themselves, this is what they say to us. They're creatives. They see themselves as change makers, visionaries, artists. There's a group of young people we work with at the moment who refer to themselves as the next gen, like next generation of young people coming up. They're designers, trendsetters, experts, like whatever it is. That it's just not for us just to assume, and they need to walk through with that label. And so that we can position them as that when they walk through our doors. I think that's a really critical first step to any of this, which is not assuming that you are, a musician or whatever it's for them to define. Thanks, Riccardo. Cool. So you heard Riccardo say a little bit about our creative spaces and activities, but actually the kind of power of these is the fact that they are co-designed. So we actually run at the moment 6 permanent creative spaces that are embedded within the community across Barnet. To bring that to life for you, we have a music studio called The Lab, which is supported by Youth Music. It's been running for over 10 years. It's open actually now twice a week. It is in an empty shop unit on a high street. We have 2 community hair and nail bars. So one of them operates in the community centre, the other operates like in the centre of an estate. These are spaces for young women, non-binary and trans young people, specifically to come through. It's the same premise. And within these spaces, our team of nail techs, hair, braiders, music producers, whatever it is, are all specialists and trained in everything from, supporting gender-based violence, as young people's violence advisors, trained to refer to high-risk disclosures around domestic abuse, for example, through to mental health specialists. So they are creative professionals in their own rights, but they hold this knowledge and these skills to be able to deliver that work through the creative process. And that's everything from early intervention all the way through to like crisis response and support. So we can support from at any point which a young person meets us. So we just wanted to tell a little story about one of our nail bars, actually, because I think this is a really beautiful way of bringing to life how to truly co-produce a space, but also how to keep co-production alive. Because actually it's all very well getting young people together to design a project as a one-off thing, but actually how do you keep that sense of like all young people being able to come in and keep that energy and keep that sense of ownership in a project, in a space? So Vale's Nails was our second nail bar that ever started. It was the first time we'd ever taken an idea that worked of a community nail bar into a new community. And the first thing that we did was not assume that that's what young people wanted, but we actually used our nail bar as a mechanism for hanging out, building relationships with young women, non-binary and trans young people at the time, and asking them that what they wanted to see and what project they wanted and what they wanted to change. And it was through these relationships and the doing the nails and the hanging out over the course of 3 to 6 months that we met probably a group of almost 30 young people. And they all decided that they did want their own nail bar. And they all lived on an estate called Strawberry Vale, and they named it Vale's Nails. So we worked with them to co-design and brand this project, and we opened every single week on a Tuesday. That was actually 11 years ago now, and I'm going to talk you through the transition, but that space is still open, and it's actually now supporting the next generation of young people. And a lot of the young people have come through it, have also become employed by Art Against Knives, are also running the space. So there's been this huge journey that the whole community has gone on. But just quickly, Riccardo, I'll whiz through this for time, but this was the kind of second iteration of Vale's Nails, so probably 4 years after we first started it, we did another rebrand. So we went back to young people. We talked about what they wanted it to look like, what they what they wanted the content to be. And then most recently, we've done a third iteration. So this is 3 iterations of the same space and the same project in the last 10 years. And we actually took 6 months to work with a group of young people in collaboration with London College of Fashion. And we designed the project, the content of the space, for 6 months to be an entire rebrand, but really going back to the who is your community? What do you stand for? What do you want to change? What do you want to do for your other young people? And taking that thinking through a concept development. And so this is the beautiful work that's being co-produced as a result of that. So the name has changed to Elevate. It's all got kind of meaning behind it. All of the illustrations and logos are all part of like the sense of unity and being able to elevate others. They've even thought about how they want to communicate and promote it to other young people in their community. Keep going. Thanks, Riccardo. I suppose like the success of that is that we now have a whole new generation of young people coming through the door. And that honestly is our outreach and engagement, because young people feel such a sense of ownership over the branding and the space themselves, that about 80% of the young people we support, which is about 460 a year in the borough of Barnet, but 80% of those sustained that level of percentage are what we call self or peer referred. So they're choosing to walk through that door. And that is an absolutely testament to the fact that we're able to co-design these spaces and give ownership to these young people. Basically this is rule number 1. If you're going to do anything, never waver away from that, and never be afraid to go back to the drawing board. It's not starting again. It's a really important part of that process to bring other young people in. Cool. The next thing is actually we operate this consistent feedback loop. And often when we think about young people's insights and thinking about what they want to hear, we think about the moments of needing to survey young people, or quite kind of traditional formats of collecting information. But one of the things that we found quite early on is that it becomes very stagnant, and often we're doing these using quite traditional formal methods of survey and evaluation, because the pressure around us to produce quant data is so significant. I'm sure you all know this feeling, and often that quant data needs to look and feel different to the different funders around us. And actually, we just wanted to pause and go, do you know what? We just want to create our own mechanism for always being able to listen and collect insight and data from young people in a way that works for them. So through relational and creative means, and that we need to make sure that we're doing this, always listening to it. And then together we will make sense of that data and communicate it externally. So we just needed to kind of redesign that process. So you can scroll a little, Riccardo. We thought we'd just very quickly describe what that now looks for us as a whole organization. So we're relatively small. There's about 16 of us as a team, and we're supporting about 460 young people a year across one borough. And we made a really significant, important change to how we work last year, which was we paused delivery one day of the week. So we were operating 24/7 around the clock, and made sure that we brought everybody in on a Monday. And the team actually co-designed the day themselves, and it's even been branded. So they call it Mondash, which is basically our reporting day. And it's our day for listening and collating insights. So the way that it works at the moment is every single team member is out there actively listening to young people, and they actually record and capture those themes in session debriefs and in our own recording systems. But what we found is it very quickly gets lost to a system. And actually what we're not able to do is extract those themes and have conversations about them and come together to kind of make sense of what we're hearing collectively. So one Monday a month, we get together and we share everything that we're hearing. And together we do quite a creative exercise, what we call it sense making, where we join the dots on the themes that we're hearing. And this is all obviously directly from young people. We also have young people in the room. So we have a team of what we call peer leaders in the room to be able to kind of correlate and check and sense check what we're hearing, that we've heard it correctly, that we're using the right language. This is good. And then together we think about what we're going to do to respond to that information. And often that's okay, cool, we're going to need to tweak or develop this the way in which we're delivering this. Let's go back to young people and give them a brief for redesigning this bit. Or it might be that actually we're hearing themes around risk and safety. And again, we need to take that back to young people and have conversations with them to think with them about what we could do to address those needs and issues. And so what we found now is we've got this beautiful kind of always on, I kind of refer to it as a bit of like a temperature check of the organization, where we can hear and see what young people are saying at all times, what's shifting, what the patterns are, and really thinking strategically about how we're working with them to respond to that as well. The only other thing I'll throw in there as well that we've developed, which I think has become really effective, which is like, no more surveys, no more extractive data gathering. Actually, young people have co-produced a whole set of different creative tools that we use for gathering that information. And again, it's just a really powerful, effective way of doing that and putting them in the lead of that information gathering. Cool. Young people decision make. So what we don't mean by this is like, we actually don't do some of the traditional stuff that we often hear about, which is like, okay, we've just got like, I don't know, 5 young people on a youth board and they're the voice for the organization and they're the people we lean to. We actually look to see how many young people we can put in leadership positions at any one time. And we think really carefully about how we're inviting all young people into key decision making. So there are a couple of ways in which we do that. First of all, we actually have an entire team of young people called peer leaders who are actually paid. So they're paid London Living Wage on their fixed term contracts, but like the hours are fixed. So we make sure that we're honouring and supporting them. And this is so that they can attend meetings and support decision making and bring their insights into our organization, and that we're valuing that exchange, because essentially they are consultants. They're not there for free, and they're helping us think. And that has been a really important kind of layer to how we operate and work, which isn't just come and join us, but actually we value you and we're going to upskill you and train you to do that. Truly, honestly, could not run this organization if they were not in place. And whenever we're stuck or we have to catch ourselves because we're decision making about young people without young people in the room, it's like, no. Like, let's go back. They're there to be our accountability partners and to help us think. The next one is that we put young people in the lead of our delivery anyway. So young people can't, we draw on the skills and the information that young people have. Why are we looking to bring in and pay external hair braiders when young people have been trained to do that themselves and can be upskilling and training other young people? So we really think carefully about the skills and the strengths that we've got in the teams of young people and how we utilize that to deliver our work. But then we also, within the organization, make sure we are never decision making alone. So that's everything from how we recruit and interview youth workers and staff and creative professionals, all the way through to the types of funding we want to go for and how we want to frame that narrative and the ask to the funder. And we are seeing more and more now, just actually, which is really exciting. Like, I suppose, like funders saying, oh, you could submit a video or you could do this. And like, whenever we see an opportunity like that, we go straight back to young people and invite them to be part of that. So they're just some examples, but we're constantly working internally to make sure that we are thinking about how we safely and appropriately bring young people into all decision making across the board. As open brackets, as a side, the money one is a big one. We do that at the moment. So young people decision make about how money is spent on their own projects, but like ultimately we want to move to a like, how is money moved and shifted around the organization, and some of the bigger decisions made in more participatory ways. And we're just figuring out over the next 12 months how we move to do that at a much larger scale. Cool. Next one. So young people are in the lead of their own support. I mean, I know that sounds really obvious, but actually just we wanted to share some examples of how we've done that in, I think, some quite extraordinary ways. So obviously, we anyone who works with young people, like, rule number one, young people are leading. But one of the things that we've experienced over the past 15 years is that's very hard to do when you're working, especially when you're working with young people who perhaps, are incredibly vulnerable, have had some really difficult experiences with the system, are obviously, about 80% of the young people we support are racialized young people, for example. So their experiences of the system and support are also completely different. And what we're seeing consistently is how difficult it is to actually still keep young people in the lead when like there are other people involved. So all of a sudden, like you can be doing that work, but then you're thrown into a room of professionals and you've got a school, you've got social care, you've got police in the room, and all of a sudden, everything that you've done to position that young people and put them in the lead is going out of the window. So all of the work that we have been doing probably since about 2018 now is how we work with those services and systems around us and young people to redesign the way in which those processes work. And a beautiful example of that is that we actually co-produced with young people. In fact, it's still live and it's still being refreshed by young people all the time. An existing tool that was used by Barnet Children's Services to assess risk. It was called a SEAM tool. And young people co-produced and redesigned it with Barnet. So they like kind of treated them as consultants. And now that tool is rolled out across the whole of children's services. And it basically means that young people are part of their own assessments. They're framed differently in the room. There's all of these different things in place that are like truly allowed young people to lead that process. And I think it's a really powerful example of what happens when you do look to young people to redesign these things that typically, we'd all think that they couldn't. But what happens when you do, and the shift that we've seen has been absolutely like remarkable. So yeah, just an example of what we mean by leading their own support. Great. Cool. Riccardo's going to take you through the next couple of slides. I'm conscious of time. I think we've got like maybe 10 more minutes of speaking. Is that all right?
Gonna whiz through. So yeah, thank you for handing over, Katie. So point number 6 is we create the environment for young people to explore and express. So a little bit about myself is I was trained in play work very early on in my career, and I guess the principles and kind of play work approach is what I've like really held on tight to inform my practice, but also share it and embed it in other places. But specifically at Art Against Knives, how play work shows up in our spaces, and we'll go on to talk about the music studio, the lab, which I'm currently sitting in, is a big part of like what Katie was talking about our nail bars, and that is essentially we see when we talk about play work, we understand play work, we draw on different principles, and for it to enable us to like create creative environments. There's kind of like 4 key things that is on your screen that enables us to like work through these different principles, and that's understanding play, observing and reflecting, supporting it, and creating the place and space for it. I guess like some like real like kind of like snapshots of some play work principles would be that like young people's play or their experience or their engagement belongs to young people, and they have the right to do it in the ways that they want and how they choose. As practitioners or adults, we don't control their play unless it becomes like physically or emotionally overwhelming to those around them. And I guess like practitioners are simply here to ensure that young people have the access to the richness and the variety of different play opportunities, including them enabling and allowing them to like take challenges, risks, opportunities for like growth in confidence and self-esteem. And obviously, play work like should and must take place within a legal and moral, legal and moral framework. A little bit more about it is, I guess, with a key part of our spaces and our projects, the biggest lesson and takeaway for me and us is like the space has to look, sound, smell, and feel like a place where young people want to be. It can't be ordered and sterile. So these nail bars, like these young people, like them being part of like the creative process and that co-production method really enables them and gives them the ownership and the power to like design it and make it feel and sound like they want it to be. So back to one of the initial points and slides that Kate was talking about, in an ideal like space for us young people can become or be an artist, be a scientist, be a nail technician, be a builder, a designer, and they're not constantly supervised by us, and they're able to like develop their own perceptions and processes and make mistakes and just do something because it's fascinating. So that kind of goes back to like us, the way we welcome young people in our spaces. So point seven is we create an environment for young people to imagine the change, and this is um somewhat related and connected to like the play work stuff, but this is like specifically around like social imagination. And I guess it's really interesting, like sometimes like I wouldn't say many years ago, but we've got access to like community centers, right? That are like a little bit run down, need to like gone past their sell by date, and to really bring to life and make it as like fresh and innovative with like the resources and equipment is like such a like massive tool and asset to like us. But I guess I say that because it's been really fascinating and interesting to see when young people for the first time they step through our doors, how their eyes may like light up and be like, wow, this is a music studio. I never knew what this like looked like. And like us positioning them or like offering them the opportunity to be like, you know, like you can continue building this and scaffolding this. But I guess a big part of my practice and some of our work is has been kind of adopted by this sociologist called Mills, which wrote a book in 1959. And he talks about, like, in summary, like the relation between like society and how people understand it, and how they can translate personal troubles into public issues. Um, so we see a lot of young people like coming to our spaces saying, yo, like my classroom needs to be different, or my timetable at school needs to be different, or the way I'm accessing this like cams or yacht work or yacht service or something like that, this needs to be different. And a big part of our job is to like reimagine, but also provide the tools, resources, creativity, the space to think and kind of build and do it at their own pace. So that brings me on to my next slide, which is a little example about a project that was funded in 2022, but went on for a couple of years, and it's funded by the NHS, to specifically look at the inequalities of young Black men accessing traditional mental health services. And what this project was able to do was, as Katie mentioned, you know, we have our youth employment arm, which is our peer leaders, and this project was able to like one employ young people, put them in jobs over the period of that project, but also continue the feedback loop of, okay, like we're working with what we can just explore and look at the topic and theme of mental health and how that relates to young Black men and the Black community, but also to look at ways of how we could creative like share um, their learnings, their thinking, their feedback up into the NHS. And that was like a really impactful opportunity, one for them and putting them in the lead to like take ownership and have and be in charge of the narrative and the conversation, but also like the other side of the learning opportunity for those in the NHS that may not have experienced here the feedback or the information or the insights in this kind of like creative way. So this looked like putting together like different articles. So young guys made like newspaper articles, they made like podcast episodes, mixtapes, like different songs that like relate to like their experiences and that. But then on the flip side, there was like real life scenarios and like case studies of young people that we were working with that are like under like mental health like acts and that type of stuff. So it was like really empowering. Another example of how we take shift power and like talk about change and that social imagination stuff is this year March we launched our exhibition Change, and it was created by young artists, creatives and activists across North London, and essentially calling for change. Again, young people from our spaces really wanted to like use their means and their methods to talk, to communicate more about what they're doing and what they've seen. And so over the last like year, we invited like 300 young people to like reflect on their identities, design their futures, and imagine change. And the work that went on show like resulted on like a breadth of like different creative talents, and we spoke about like a lot of the work that we were doing. But essentially a big part of that was like from the production process, amplifying voices, and just inspiring and just inviting others to like experience and see the change that young people wanted to see. going on to a little case study, and this is like specific to like our youth music funders who have been so amazing. And as Katie said, like they've been part of our journey and our story for like the last 10 years. But the lab which I'm sitting in is our music studio. It was developed and designed, co-designed about 10 years ago. And very similar to our nail bar, we transform our shop unit, our space, into a recording studio which runs 2 weeks out of the week. It came from, we ran a 6-week project years ago called On Track, and it was like a 6-week intensive program that enabled young people to like basically make an album at the end of the project. And what we saw was it was really oversubscribed, and what we saw was young people wanted free recording access, like to recording spaces. So our music studio, the lab, was born and birthed from that. A big part of the project, sorry, someone came in and just really like chopped my chain of thought. But the project essentially, it's called the lab because it's a laboratory. It's putting off from the idea of our play work and creating spaces. We understand that young people need the right to explore, experiment, play around with different ideas. So what we see in our space is young people being able to pick up the mic, take on and adopt that pirate radio station heritage of like passing the mic around, MCing back to back, doing different ciphers. We see the idea of loose parts. So that's a play work theory where it talks about how equipment and resources can be interchangeable, used for different processes, different methods and means. And we have inside there a beat station, which is like really hot on, like young people can play it by themselves. We've got drum machines, keyboards, synths, and it fosters and contributes and enables young people to like come together and collaborate with each other. And the decks is just like, we see young people like performing, adopting or making like their own little stage name and presence. And yeah, the lab, we see about 20 to 25 young people a week. As Katie mentioned, we've got this next gen concept where we're seeing a younger age come through. So we split different days for age groups to better safeguards, avoid exploitation, just have better quality youth provision. And I believe I've come to the end of my slides. I guess I'm open to any questions. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, so feel free to put any questions in the chat or just raise your hand and I can point at you and say, please speak. In the meantime, yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that practice. Steve. Hiya.
Hi, Riccardo. Hi, Katie. Thanks, Phoebe. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I was just sat there like a Winston nodding dog watching the presentation. Thanks. It's just so much in line with what we do at Beats Plus in Hull. And why do you have to all be from London? You're so far away from me. Hull is like, it needs it so much at the moment. And we've worked on No More Knives. We created a 10-minute educational music video where we're going to communities and campaign and give families information about carrying weapons. We also created a video called No More County Lands. And again, we went into communities and give families information about grooming and the dangers of gang culture. And we're just in that transformation now, what you speak about of young people leading everything. So we've just created an AI app with young people that is an image generator and a text generator, but it also has safeguarding guidelines in the app whilst you're using it. So that was all created by young people. You know, they came up with every single idea, and it was amazing to just sit back and watch it, the creation from the young people rather than leading it. And we've just started another project, called Campaign Champions, where we're taking our Beats Bus vehicle and we're going into communities, meeting young people, finding out what is important to them, and then mentoring them to campaign about what they want to do about it and the solutions. So no questions really. I just wanted to say, like, amazing presentation. It just reignited my belief in everything that we do at Beats Bus. So thank you.
Cool. It sounds like you've got the formula down, Steve. Like we said earlier, like I think once you, as long as you make sure you're maintaining that approach, right? Always looking and to learn from and to work with young people. Ultimately, we're not here to do anything for them, right? We're here to make it possible for them to create change. So what is it that we need to do?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, we have a youth board now, and the young people on the youth board certainly have changed the way that we work at Beats Bus as well. You know, at first it was all about, yeah, we need to give young people the free sessions, we need to give them free access to studio, and we need to keep them safe. But now, yeah, it's totally changed. Like, Beats Bus should be for young people, by young people, and that's the direction we're heading in at the moment. So thank you.
Katie, did you mention your presentation was also sort of co-created with your young people, and you kind of...
Yeah, we're just really trying to challenge ourselves, like everything we do. In fact, actually, like it's quite unusual that that Riccardo and I are out here like presenting together on our own. In fact, I don't think we've done it together for like, I don't know, like maybe 10 years. And because genuinely, like, so obviously all the work that we do is like co-produced, and like typically it's like peer leaders and the team presenting. Actually everybody's so busy delivering today that they were cool for us to come and do it. But that's because, and we piloted this little approach yesterday in our team meet. So we did like a design sprint with the teams and the delivery team, a lot of who, by the way, are young people who have come through our programs, are now employed as youth workers or in various roles, and young people. And we said to them, cool, so like this is the headline of the presentation, and this is like some of the points we've got down for how we should power to young people. And then we did a design sprint, and like, so all the content today was co-produced with young people in the team, and we did it in an hour.
Great. Well, it's lovely to have you both here. Leah, I hope that's how you say your name. Leah.
It is how you say my name. Thank you. First up, just incredible, like the work you guys are doing. That's just really inspiring, amazing. We are a social enterprise based up in the Black Country, so in the West Midlands, doing kind of similar things. So it's all around kind of arts and creativity and youth voice, and a lot of co-production as well. What we don't have is any particular hubs or regular spaces. And I've been looking recently, we've been discussing, but you were saying a lot of yours were existing vacant spaces. I just wondered how you approached that, how it came to be, you know, who was the person in the know that you got the sort of the permission for?
Oh gosh, I mean, me and Riccardo talking about space for days. I can say a couple of things, and I know, Riccardo, you'll want to say more, but the first thing is like, so the most important thing for us has always ever been what space exists already, and how do we support that, and how do we partner with it. So it's never for us to come in and create space from the start. But we found, though, very early on, and I'm just going to be quite candid about this one because I don't think we talk about it enough, which is existing community spaces often are not safe and not accessible to young people who are marginalized or whose identities are marginalized and who've been harmed as a result. And so to have multi-purpose community spaces, or just general like open access youth spaces, like that's not who we are working with. So actually what we've found is that those young people need to have their own space and feel like they're building and creating their own space in order to feel included and safe.
And to use these current vacant spaces, do you have to go through local councils? Is it private property management?
So yeah,
loads of spaces, isn't there? And like you said, it's, you know, there's a lot of empty units in places. And just how was that process? How did that happen?
So we always pilot by going, cool, like we're going to go out to you and somewhere neutral. So often we may start in an existing space. So it's not that we don't want to make that happen and we don't want to do the work to draw an existing space. So we start there, and that's how we meet young people. And then often the pattern goes, okay, cool, we don't want to be here because we're in an existing youth centre. This is a real life case study at the moment. There's no space in one part of the borough. We have to use an existing youth centre that's there, but that youth centre has metal arches and metal detectors, and they're literally making young people come through those. So talk about, you know, criminalising young people. And like, it's just, I've talked about replicating harm of a system. Like, no, we're not like that. It's not the 80s. So we've already got a huge barrier. And so now we have to look for alternative space. So the way that we're doing that now is talking to existing community groups and the local authority. And I think there is going to be, there's loads of redevelopment happening in Barnet. And so actually we're about to get some of the developers to sponsor some space for us. But part of that agreement is we don't want 6 weeks worth of funding for the space. To turn up and be consistent and offer safe spaces for young people, you need a minimum commitment of 3 years, minimum. So we need that. We need access to it 3 years. We need your developers to do it up for us for free, right? Because that's a cost, the hard cost that we don't have and people won't fund. And thirdly, we need to make sure that we've got the running costs secured, because the worst thing you can do for vulnerable groups of young people is show up and say, hey, we're here, and then, oh, we can't be next month. So that's that one way. The permanent space that we now have, which is an empty shop unit on another high street, and we ended up having to go, we privately rent now. And it costs us £52,000 a year to run this space. That is, it's actually now we have it as an office as well, and it is open. It's programmed 4 days of the week, and it there's a footfall of about 150 young people through it a week. So, you know, it is really worthwhile and actually more cost effective than just going to rent other places or try and run loads. But the only way that we could make that work was to privately rent, because there was such little support.
Thank you for that.
Davey, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both, Riccardo, Katie. That was a brilliant presentation. I loved it. It looks super funky, everything that you're doing. And I'd just like to reiterate that we pride ourselves on quite a funky space. Doing presentations, which can be the most boring and, you know, sleepy thing ever for young people to do, but having them involved is such a big thing to make things funky as well. Just wanted to say how cool that all looked. We're a project in Southend where knife crime and actually a lot of news is happening in Southend to do with knives. So, you know, we've taken this sort of, if you want to call it, opportunity to raise awareness a little bit more, to work with those at risk. It's probably going to like might help a little bit with what Leah said, with her comment, because we've sort of partnered up with the Youth Justice Service. I don't know if that's a national thing or if it's just specific to our area, but obviously we're working with those at high risk that have either offended or, you know, could offend, and to help those have just come out of like juvenile prison as well. So it's a new world to us because we work with a lot of vulnerable, disadvantaged young people, SEND groups. We do work with like youth offenders and such, but we've really specifically gone into with the Youth Justice Service, and to work with them and collaborate them, we've had to be very mobile because we have an amazing looking studio, because we believe that to be creative, you want to come into something that is really welcoming for you to, you know, hit you in the face and be creative. But we found out at this, where we work at the Civic Centre with our young people, it is not very creative at all. It's just plain white everywhere, glass walls, all like, you know, filtered out. So the next time we go, we take lots of lights and make it a little bit more funkier. But I think the next sort of space that they're going to help us with is something called a Beecroft Gallery, and that is a very it's actually a jazz museum, which they're going to help us be in there. I'm sort of like on a tangent of saying how both of our projects are, you know, looking very similar, but it's a very new world to us. And I thought maybe the sort of question that how would you deal with this? Because we have a lot of young people that are into drill music, and real rap is a new one for me recently. So when they've talked about violent content, you know, lyrical content, as we can all imagine, a lot of the time the guys instantly say to us, I don't do that, by the way. I just do that. I just say that. We can start to ask questions, but they have like an hour with us, and that's about it. But how are those conversations started without being too I don't want to take away people's creativity, but I also want to stop that sort of language and sort of thoughts, if you get what I mean. Sorry if this is a long asked question, but I like to try and say, look, it's not the best thing, and you know that, but I also don't want to I understand about how creativity through lyrics is very important, and you're speaking about a world that I am not a part of, or can't imagine it existing in mine. But anyone here that thinks they have a sort of way of approaching that, yeah, feel free to to say something like that right now.
I'm happy to take that.
Yeah, thanks, Riccardo.
Definitely a dilemma that we've come across and experienced, and deal with, weekly. I guess with my playwork hat on, the words and the choices of words that they use is what I would call a cue to like unpack and pick up and discuss. So that's kind of like my first go-to is like, let's unpack that word, let's unpack that lyric. What does it mean? What's the meaning of it? What are you trying to say? Finding alternative ways to reshape that line, or bring extracts or reference points of how other people have maybe saying the same things. Not what you say, is how you say it. I like to get a little bit theatrical and drama, kind of like, and explore how people can, like, how you could say it in different ways. I'm not going to do it on this call, but I guess another part is if we're hearing a group of guys that are maybe from the same area, but they come in different groups and they're talking about an incident that may have happened, for example, that is well known to the community, and they're talking about it in their lyrics, it does offer an opportunity for us to look at it as like themes. So if we are hearing like a certain name or a certain motive or something that's popped off, it enables us to like, so if we're hearing more rhymes or words or lyrics around knife crime, but we haven't heard, it's kind of dropped off the radar for 6 months, we kind of look at it as like, okay, here's a theme, can we link this or connect this to any of our community kind of like local statutory work, that people that we're working with. We think about, we do some work which we're going to talk about in another exchange and learning session in a couple of months, but that is called formulation. So how we think and place certain dilemmas or circumstances and think around different themes and topics. And yeah, you're bang on, Katie, with like what you put in the chat was there's an amazing organization called Art Not Evidence that look at rap lyrics specifically and how they're being caught up in legal cases. And I guess, yeah, part of I would say another big part, just like in closing, is the words that they use is, again, the cue, like it enables us to like build relationships and for them to like open it up, unpack it. It gives us an insight into like where their mind may be. Is it true? Is it not? Do we take it face value? Is this like an immediate safeguarding situation that we got to kind of like log report, unpack, or is it just a 9-year-old talking smack? Super imaginative, and how can we divert that and shift that to maybe something that's new, rather than imitating and mirroring what they may see meaninglessly on their social media feed. I hope that's helpful.
What Riccardo said about like creativity is a tool for expression, and we have to hold that, and we have to make sure that's a safe space, and we have to make sure that those relationships are maintained. And then how and what we do with that, it's all an opportunity but we have to move at different paces to address that. I think I just wanted to add another thing that we're doing a lot of work with now is around, challenging misogyny and misogynistic language and any kind of harmful or gender-based violence through like, lyrics. And I think what is important to remember but never excuse is a lot of this has been normalized, and a lot of the words and the lyrics and the things that young people are talking about is just because they're used to hearing that. And actually a lot of it is unpacking and really challenging. They're like, do you know what that means? And doing this kind of education knowledge piece around it, and really then being able to work with them and putting them in the lead of identifying what it is that's wrong about that, rather than being like, no, this is wrong. Like, open the conversation and bring them in to the thinking and the process so they can lead and come to their own conclusions. And I think, like, yeah, it's always a sensitive line to tread, but it is and to this day remains the most powerful tool for being able to do that work with young people.
Daniel, did you want to come in? I'm just also going to launch a survey in the meantime, so not to distract you, but there'll be a survey if everyone could, lost my AirPod, complete that at the same time.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm based at the Wiltshire Music Centre in Wiltshire, and we're looking a lot at how we can co-design spaces and bring more youth voice into our work. I just had a question around the peer leaders. Firstly, thank you. It's super inspiring. The work that you guys are doing is so thoughtful and beautifully constructed. You should be super proud of what you're doing, which I sense you are. So it's great. Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the peer leaders and understand a little bit more about that process, how many people you put in place, and how just like the nuts and bolts of how it works, because it seems like a sensible way of working.
Do you want to know all the things we wish we hadn't done? Because that's what we're
Yes, please. Yeah.
As a side, we're actually working with another organisation to capture our learning around youth employment, because we want to put it out and share it like really intentionally and wide. So perhaps it's something we can or either email us or we can disseminate through youth music, because this is a really, really important. It's really important that we share how to do this meaningfully, and also, like, if harm or things haven't gone right in a process, that we don't repeat that we share what can be done to mitigate it. So we have banks of learning, basically. The one, I think I'll say a couple of things, Rickardo, I know you'll want to add to it, but start small, don't overstretch yourselves, and treating young people as employees is no different to any other employee. So think and plan about the infrastructure that you need to hold them as an employee like you would anyone else. There is no difference. And then I would add at least 30% more capacity to that employee, because what you're doing is supporting that employee who needs additional, who's going to present with additional, needs and support, right? It just is. So be prepared and make sure you're good to go with that, right? And be open to it. Be very, very, very careful that you're thinking about your policy and procedure, because what you'll instantly find, we're like, this is a whole nother conversation, but all of our policies and procedures are really punitive, right? We're literally just like, you can't be sick, you can't be this, you can't be that, you can't have anything, because and policy and procedure doesn't allow it. Or if if you're late too many times, like, basically you're punished. And actually there's a complete and utter tension there between how we want to be able to support young people and honestly take really anti-oppressive approaches to supporting young people with all sorts of needs and addressing the why, the mental health, the personal issues, everything. And then but you've brought them in as employees, so your governance is saying do the other thing. So look at that and think about your governance, and actually be really clear about how you're going to support young people in those moments and the approaches that you want to design together before it gets to that point, because it's just going to happen. I would do it with a couple of young people. I would make sure that you've also got the capacity to support them. Honestly, I think a minimum of 12 months. So if we could, we'd have 2 young people in 12-month placements rather than, 5 young people for 6, because it really is about, a minimum of 12 months to support young people in holding down a role and being supported in it. It takes that time. I would also say, really think about your support structure. You need to have your kind of typical line management, or however that works. So somebody supporting a young person and being able to deliver against their job and really clear role and responsibilities. But then separately, you need to think who's going to support them from like a kind of supervision and personal mentoring support. And they should be separate people, because they're separate relationships and they need separate things, but that should exist. And really think about the fact that you want to give agency to young people. And if you're not careful about that, like think about the roles and responsibilities that allow them to really thrive and get things done. So give them minimal things so they can get it done and achieve it and be supported in doing it, and then build on that rather than giving them a huge job description. Because actually it's that do one project at a time, complete it, smash it, and then do another one approach that is really critical to supporting any young people in being able to feel like they're actually achieving and thriving. Finally, I would say do loads of work with your team, to be honest, and other young people, about how we need to hold individuals in mind, individual circumstances in mind. We're not being nicer to somebody for being late. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, really think about how the team's going to take a role in understanding each individual young person and their role in supporting them too. And it's a weird one to say, actually. I didn't think we'd need to go to do that work, because I'd assumed that our team, who can do that in so many ways, would, but it really has presented some difficult stuff. Yeah. Oh, pay them hourly rates, but also add in budget for transport, and because they're going to need that, and think about how you're supporting their expenses process, because a lot of young people don't have cash to travel to you and need to wait to be paid. Don't give them a 0-hour contract. Like, if you're going to give the hours, even if they don't show, or they're sick, or you close, or your provision isn't running, make sure you can commit to pay them, because those young people need that paycheck every single month. And like, let's not waver on that cash. Make sure it's in your budget and you continue to pay them. There you go.
Alongside that, for me, I guess a massive important is, I wouldn't say so much like over emphasizing it, but just acknowledging like the respect and the dignity that comes with being employed. And I would imagine that a lot of these young people are going to be like ex-participants or participants that are like they see your provision or the relationship they have with you and your team as like, that's my safe place. So it's really about like setting them up. So what we've seen like a number of young people, like their first job or experience into the workplace is with Art Against Knives. So I say that to say, I'm really thoughtful of the habits, the stuff that they're going to learn inherently, or like the conduct, workplace performance. This is going to be their first experience of that, and they're going to go out hopefully into the wider world, into other employment opportunities, and we don't want them picking up bad habits and traits and attitudes towards work learn from their first place. So yeah, it's really about like a ton of care, really like mentalizing the position they may be in, you know, what employment means to them and their background and their household, but also their progression route.
Thank you so much.
I'm massive on like employment for those further from the job market. And I think, yeah, like I would never underestimate the dignity that comes with employment, but also the social value. And if there is impact coming from like employing a handful of young people, like stitch that into it, or like stitch that into or bring that to life in your reporting, you know?
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. We're a little bit over, so I'll let everyone get on with their days. But honestly, thank you so much. You're both brilliant. And Art Against Knives, they'll actually be back, you guys, for 2 more sessions. So I'll share that round with everybody. But yeah, thanks everyone.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure.
Have a great day. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye-bye.